Hello and happy Thursday, everybody. Josh here with On the Wrong Lead. And man, we got a lot to get to. We have two marathon cards this Saturday. We're going to cover a late pick five, very tough sequence at Fairgrounds. And then we're going to take a quick look at the Jeff Ruby Stakes also at Turfway Park, part of a 13 race card there at Turfway Park. But I feel like we need to bring in the most tilted man in America right away, Mr. Caleb Knight. Caleb, I believe you've mentioned that you think even evil Bob Dole could have scored 11 points in the half. And you are not happy with what is going on in that Texas Oregon State game. Or Oregon.
Colorado State.
Colorado State, sorry.
I mean, I love March Madness. I will bet on teams I've never heard of. I will bet against teams that everyone. I mean, it's one of the best times of the year for betting, horses notwithstanding. But my God, Colorado State, you score 11 points in an entire. You score 8 points in the first 5 minutes, and then 3 points the rest of the half.
And then what got you earlier? BYU.
Yeah, but that was kind of that one looked rough from the beginning. So, hey, Colorado State is bringing it back here. You know, I think they're down by 7-ish now, so they're working back. So the fat lady didn't sing just yet.
All right, and then we're going to bring other noted basketball expert, Mr. Mark Two Turns. Mark, you had the BYU upset in your bracket, didn't you?
I did have the BYU upset. I actually had written down both the 11 seed upsets and then last minute pulled one of them back. So I feel like a dumbass there on the other one. But no, I mean, it's March Madness is March Madness. And, you know, those 11 seeds are tricky.
Yeah, interestingly, Oregon was actually favored in that game. That they were the 11 seed, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah. You get those whole win a minor conference and, you know, just there's a certain point where the numbers don't read as much, and there's a lot of teams this year that got really underseeded. Somebody like an Auburn that they drew a 4, but they could have, you know. Anyways, there's a lot of funness there.
Yeah, what was really funny is so I needed Dayton to win. As part, I have like a 7-leg parlay going, so I need Dayton to win. And I looked at the score; they were down by like 15, and I just took a nap instead. And I was like, "All right, I'm not going to watch it." And so I was out to dinner with a couple of my buddies, Rob and BJ, who were in town. And I was like, "Yeah, you know, I all my parlays are dead because Dayton lost." And they're like, "What are you talking about? Dayton won."
Yeah,
I was like, "No, they didn't." And he's like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "No, Dayton." And they're like, "Yeah, Dayton won by 2." And sure enough, I had to look it up on my phone. Yeah, Dayton ended up winning. So maybe the nap helped. Maybe I just need to take a nap.
Is pulling this back after a little shit talking by one Caleb Knight. They've decided to right the ship and make this a game now.
Yeah, they needed to write a little bit more, but at least it's going in the right direction.
Well, speaking of writing, man who loves writing on whiteboards. Matthew DeSantis failed the menace. Mr. Naira Betts himself. Matthew, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Because my Furman Paladins didn't make it to the NCAA tournament this year, I am abstaining from doing bracket or any betting. I will wait another 42 years for them to get back into the NCAA tournament. Hopefully it's not that long again. But yeah, it's always, I mean, obviously it's an amazing time of year. Last year was, I mean, surreal. To see, you know, my alma mater, this little tiny school in South Carolina, upset the University of Virginia in the first round, and just incredible moment to suddenly see Furman trending on social media. And it's just very cool. So, you know, it's a great time of year. Always rooting for those small school upsets, and you know, a school like Duquesne from Western Pennsylvania that, you know, a lot of my friends went to from high school. You know, seeing that. You know, that school win today was a lot of fun. People pronouncing it Duquesne, you know, just people not knowing anything about the school. So yeah, it's a fun time of year. I love it.
Yeah, it's also really fun to pronounce it Duquesne in front of people that get triggered by the fact that you don't know how to say it the right way. I had a lot of fun with that at work today. That was very enjoyable for me.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to spend some time with our buddy Ryan Dickey up at the Circus Sportsbook in Illinois, which is at the temporary, which is basically right now is a tent in what's going to be the parking lot for a future casino. But they have a nice setup. They have like 32 TVs, and yeah, it's it was nice. They had a nice little buffet out there, and a decent crowd, I think, for a Thursday. I'm guessing tomorrow's gonna be busier. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it out there tomorrow, but last kind of thing I want to talk about March Madness before we get into the racing. Gamblers are funny, right? Because like you can take the most just logical person who has absolutely no superstitious tendencies, but all of a sudden they have money on something and superstition becomes a real thing, right? And I've talked about Mark calling a horse home at last year. I think it was last year's NHC. And other stuff where like you're just like this is stuff you don't do, everyone kind of knows, but it's really funny because you start getting these weird patterns, weird other stuff, and this year my friend Clark's alma mater, Longwood, has snuck into the round of 64 here again, and the last 3 years, a phallic name has upset a 1 or 2 seed. Fairly Dickinson last year, obviously, notoriously beat the number 1 seed Purdue. And man, off the top of my head, I don't remember all the rest of them, but I think
it was St. Peter's. I think St. Peter's was one of them, and I forget the other. But yeah, I saw this as well. This is fun.
Yeah. So guys, send it in on Longwood to upset over the number 1 seed of the entire tournament, right? Well, why am I blanking? Houston. Yeah. So, but. Yeah, it's fun, right? Like I don't know much about sports betting. I have started reading through the logic of sports betting, which is considered by many people to be kind of like the Bible, the starting point for getting more serious in the sports betting. So I'm trying to become a little bit more serious about it. I'm not there yet, but March Madness is always a fun time. It's kind of like the Derby, right? The pool's big enough where you can get some exposure to some places that have bigger, just there's just more money out there, right? The pools are going to be a little bit more exact. I mean, I don't know. It's not as big of a, it's not as treacherous as it may seem. Like I don't know, betting WNBA basketball or something like that. But yeah, let's get into these races. Because it's the only race we're going to cover on the card, why don't we start with the Jeff Ruby Stakes real quick here? Turfway has kind of just been an absolute puzzle to me this year, and I feel like I say that every year as if there was a year where I had ever figured Turfway out. But this is an interesting race. You got a nice full field of 12. You got 2 also eligibles here. And Matthew as our guest, I'm curious where you landed here.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting race. Obviously, we're going to see the scratch of Agate Road, and in all likelihood, you're going to see Triple Espresso draw into the race in some capacity. If there's one more scratch that would have to come in. So, yeah, this is, like I said, I think it's an interesting race. I don't think there's a ton of speed in this race. It's interesting to see. I was comparing kind of the DRF pace projector to what Optics is kind of saying in both the Louisiana Derby and the Jeff Ruby Stakes. And there's kind of a differentiation between both of them too, where DRF thinks it's going to be a hot pace in both instances, and Optics is maybe not quite as optimistic on that in terms of lower contention and maybe more modest speed up front. Obviously, the horse Endlessly, who's your morning line favorite, does look very tough. The horse is 4 for 5 winning, the number 10 horse, and won the El Camino Real last time out. So I can certainly understand why people would go to that horse. The horse that I kind of got drawn to and that I'm interested in is both the 3 and the 8. Those are the 2 horses that I'm going to be using in my different bets. The 3, Lucky Jeremy, I think is lone speed. And I think we'll just get out there on the front end and could just take him gate to wire. And that would not surprise me at all. You get Gerardo Corrales aboard. And I love that sort of combination of jockey and horse. And then the number 8, Otello, is a horse that is a Christophe Clement horse who obviously won the Mucho Macho Man and then didn't really run that well in the Holy Bull. But this is a horse that is all turf underneath and will have absolutely no problem getting the distance. And I think is going to take to the synthetic pretty well. And I know this is a horse that the Clement barn was high on, and I'm willing to, 15 to 1 on the morning line. I don't think you'll get that come post time, but that's a horse that I'm definitely interested in at a big price. So those are the 2 that really caught my eye. Lucky Jeremy because of the pace scenario, and Otello because of the pedigree / morning line price that I just think looks too good to pass up.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just have to echo what you said because I landed on the 2 same exact horses.
It's fun.
So obviously the 3 horse I do believe is going to be your inside drawn speed and can get loose out there. Gerardo Corrales and Bill Morey are 38% over the last 2 months here. Bill Morey always does very, very well at Turfway Park. And this is a horse that has shown some very, very good speed, going 23 and 3 and 47 flat at Sunland Park. I thought that Lucky Jeremy made a ton of sense here. And this is kind of a Mark angle that I know Mark has pointed out at Saratoga occasionally. But whenever I see like one of these, Mark has pointed this out specifically with JJ, but I've kind of taken this a little bit more with most of the big name jockeys, the guys who don't need to always take every single mount. Maybe the guys are a little older. Mike Smith is a really good example of this out west. You'll see him just pop up on some random horse that isn't a John Sheriff's horse, and you're just like, why is Mike Smith riding this? And then he goes off at 8 to 1 and wins, and you're like, oh, that's why he's riding this horse. JJ is kind of the same thing. He's the East Coast version of Mike Smith. Sorry, Mark. The fact that
but he's half Mike Smith's age.
Maybe. The fact that JJ kind of ends up on here, and that piqued my interest to start. Right, I was like, all right, why is JJ riding this horse? I mean, he probably could have gotten on any of these local horses because the jock colony at Turfway Park is not necessarily up to snuff to someone of like JJ's caliber here, right? But you start looking a little bit deeper, and you see Curlin on top, Escandiera on the bottom, and you're just like, okay, this is definitely a horse that will probably take the synthetic. Our friend Chase, the Wolf of Oaklawn, always loved betting Curlins on the synthetic. So I thought that this was a very interesting horse on the surface switch here. And although he did run flat in the Holy Bull, I mean, you see turf pedigree, you see a surface switch here, you see a very competent jock aboard. Not to say, I mean, he's had at least 1.5 competent jocks previously with Sayas and Rosario. Depends which Rosario you get. But, I just thought that this was an interesting spot for the horse. I had a question mark written down on him, but I really just, outside of the 3, didn't really land on anybody else that I really wanted to get behind. So this kind of ended up being my second choice in this race. So, Caleb, how did you kind of see this one?
Yeah, I couldn't get as perhaps creative as you two. I guess I will touch on the 8 Otello since he apparently is a fan favorite, and I know Mark's going to pick him because Castellano's up. Aren't you a little concerned with the fact that he's regressed in every single start and now comes into – I mean, the Jeff Ruby isn't historically thought of as a tough race, but that Holy Bull, when Fierceness didn't show up, that wasn't the strongest race either, I suppose. I mean, doesn't that – give you some pause for concern, especially considering you're not going to get 15 to 1?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit concerning. For me, it's all about the surface switch, though, more than anything else. That I just
Sure.
don't think this was a dirt horse at any point, and so I can kind of forgive the regression as this horse got a little bit tougher in against other, higher caliber dirt horses. I just think switching this over to the synthetic, and I think eventually, obviously, later this year, this horse will be all on the turf. I think it's a horse that I'm interested in. Do you get 15 to 1? No. And there's definitely a point where I'm not interested in that horse anymore. This horse gets really below 8 to 1, and I'm probably not as interested in that horse anymore. So, if this horse goes off at 6 to 1 or 5 to 1 in the race, then I'm going to probably shift my money to a horse like Lucky Jeremy.
Okay, no, that's completely fair. I mean, I do like Lucky Jeremy, the other horse that you guys have both talked about. Also, a horse that I don't think you see 8 to 1 on in this field, but I guess we'll see. But for me, I mean, I really think it's tough to get around the favorite. Matt sort of alluded to it earlier with Endlessly. The horse has done essentially nothing wrong except for one hiccup in the Breeders' Cup. Oftentimes, you can forgive a horse for a race either in the Breeders' Cup or in the Kentucky Derby. They just don't tend to show up in those kind of spots. Came back and actually has proven over the synthetic, albeit at Golden Gate. I think time form was perhaps a touch too harsh in downgrading that speed figure due to the pace. Out of the 4 horses to run back out of that El Camino Real Derby, 3 of them have won and 1 of them finished second. So I do think that turned out to be a pretty lively race. Mike McCarthy does quite well when he ships east. I love the fact that Rispoli sees fit to make the trip. I'm not really going to overthink this one. I think there's about 6 or 8 horses you could make a case for after the favorite, but I think the favorite's pretty strong and everybody else has more than a couple holes that I'd have to spend more money on covering than I feel comfortable with. So I think the race kind of goes through endlessly.
Yeah, I mean, Endlessly makes a ton of sense here. I'm not going to try to talk anybody off Endlessly. It just, my only knock on Endlessly is that, his best race isn't that much faster than any of the other horses' best races in here who've run on synth. So, if you like him, you have to like quite a lot of others in here. Now, yeah, he obviously has the best winning record, so it makes all the sense. Wouldn't talk anybody off it. My top choice was the 3 for all the reasons you guys have already talked about, and Lucky Jeremy. Corrales on a horse with controlling speed at Turfway is just something that I very much like, especially a horse that's proven to the distance. So I thought it made a ton of sense. And the only other horse that I thought I want to just touch on really briefly is the 9 horse, Seize the Gray for Dwayne Lucas, a horse that, the move forward from the last race of the 2-year-old season to the first of the 3-year-old season was pretty massive. Time form really liked that last race. It's an Arrogate. Arrogates can kind of run, I think Arrogate handles synth fine. I don't really have any statistics up for it. It would be kind of a crowd favorite if the coach gives himself another entry in the Derby. So I thought Seize the Gray was, usable, but probably not at 6 to 1, but I think you'll get quite a bit better than 6 to 1 on that one.
Yeah, I think you're right about Arrogates being good on the synthetic, 17% win rate in synthetic routes. My biggest concern with Seize the Gray was the Lasix question. That effort, that first effort as a 3-year-old was with the assistance of Lasix. Dwayne Lucas over the last 5 years, 2 for 31 when switching a horse off Lasix. So that was maybe a little bit concerning of, which version of Seize the Gray do you get? But, I made the point in my write-up for Naira Betts that maybe it was just this horse got 4 months off and matured and filled out and got bigger and is going to be that horse now moving forward. So, it's by no means a disqualification to see that. The other concern that I always have with a horse like Seize the Gray is the my racehorse factor and what price you actually end up getting on a horse like that, where maybe you still have 1 or 2 questions. And suddenly if that horse is 4 to 1 or 9 to 2 or something like that, and you go, it's not maybe quite as appealing at that price as it was maybe 6 to 1 or 8 to 1 or something along those lines. So just some notes, but you're absolutely right about the Arrogate pedigree. And, typically those horses only get better the longer they run too.
Yeah, I normally don't take a look at ownership. And of course, I'm saying, oh, geez, I think this is the kind of horse that gets lost on the board. And then I realized as you're talking, I realized, it's a Myron. Maybe I don't get the price. I was like, oops.
I see Matthew Bickey in chat. He likes the 14, which I know was the horse you briefly mentioned is going to, has a chance to draw in here. He's got 14-7 as his top 2 picks here. The 7 being Woodcourt here for Luan Machado and Cipriano Contreras. Luan Machado is I don't know if he's the leading rider, but he seems to basically win everything at Turfway. So might be one to
also
look at.
The Axeman on a horse named Woodcourt. I mean, that sounds like a good combination of things to bet on. And that's a horse that ran. That was Sarah El Badwi that was her crazy idea in the Rebel. And that horse ran a heck of a lot better than its odds. I mean, I think it was 44-1 or something like that come post time, and ran 4th. It's a cool horse that's won on synthetic turf and dirt already as a 3-year-old. So obviously can handle a lot of different surfaces. And my biggest concern with that horse is it's going to need to get faster. And that was kind of at least from a buyer speed figure perspective. I don't know what maybe some of the other surfaces say, but that's one that is, like I said, might need to get a little faster. But certainly, like it's a really cool horse, one that I find myself rooting for, not only because Luan Machado is just an automatic bet at Turfway, but also because of the horse's form.
Charles B's talking about Northern Flame, probably the other speed horse in this race. And I looked at this horse and I was very very interested until I saw who was riding, because that's just not necessarily who I want on the front end on a speed horse. But it is funny because I wasn't watching racing back when this was the case, but all I ever heard about Julian Leparoux is the man knows how to ride on synthetic. Because when Keeneland was still a synthetic track, I think he might have won leading rider there, and he was just like lights out. And so I always wondered why like him and Flo, because I think Flo was kind of the same way, why they didn't like try going up to Woodbine or something, somewhere that they ride synthetic a little bit more. But I just don't know. Like it doesn't seem like the right type of run style for. I mean, he has won on the lead on this horse at Oak Lawn before and at Churchill. So he has gotten the lead before. Apparently it has happened, although I don't think I've ever seen it. But
I think my bigger issue with Northern Flame is if you look, he's not fast enough to get in front of Lucky Jeremy, and if you look, he's never passed anybody, and so that's the problem. It's like he could sit a tracking trip, sit second or third, and he'll finish second or third. Like he's not going to pass anybody. So that was my biggest concern with Northern Flame was I just don't think he gets the lead, and if he doesn't, then it's kind of like okay, well. You're going to be in a contest for a minor award. And I just have a hard time with that one. And I think it's telling that coming out of the Rebel that Kenny McPeak sends Common Defense, who finished second, to a much tougher spot in the Louisiana Derby as a follow-up, and doesn't even put Northern Flame in the Arkansas Derby, presumably to break him up from Mystic Dan. But still, it's just kind of interesting that he winds up in this spot.
Yeah, I was waiting for Josh to stop talking, and Matt literally, butted in to steal the exact words out of my mouth. He's never passed another horse, and he seems like the plotter type, and just kind of, that he kind of I don't know, grindery, plottery type. So I think this is a bigger field. This is a much tougher field than what he's faced. I think this race is probably arguably tougher than the Rebel as well. So I just have a hard time putting him on top.
I learned my lesson betting Kenny McPeak on
that. I think we all have.
All right, let's move on here to the Fairgrounds card, which is very tough card. I kind of just wrote down a couple of top picks, I think, for each race, because I feel like there are some races where I feel like I could talk about half the field. So we're going to start off here at mile 16th, the Tom Benson Memorial, a listed stakes, 150K here. And looking at the morning line, your favorite is the 9, Spirit and Glory at 4-1. I did like her a bit coming out of the Al Stall Memorial. Won that race at a modest 3-1. I think it was like the second or third choice in that spot. And And I have her on top in this spot. I just, a lot of these horses are coming out of that same race. And when I look at some of the new shooters coming in from it, I don't really know. I don't really know where you're going to get. The other horse I took is, I guess, kind of an outsider. Shipping in from Gulfstream in the 10. Is it Delahaye?
LA, yeah.
Delahaye. It's going to be a Chad Brown horse, so I don't know necessarily what kind of price you're going to get on it. But the Fairgrounds turf does end up being does historically tend to play to speed, and I think that this might be your speed horse here, and you get Tyler aboard, who is can be aggressive on the turf. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this one on the lead, if not close to the lead. I mean, you do have a couple other speed horses, but they're all drawn outside. The 11 Hidden Connection, who apparently is going to be trying turf for the first time here. And then you do have the 13 Not So Close. But I don't know. I feel like you've kind of seen that Not So Close once she tries to go over a mile, she just absolutely folds. So, I think that I'm going to stick with the 9 here, Spirit and Glory. Just coming off the good form here, the last 4. He's got 2 wins and a second. He's got to run over this track, this distance one, the prep for this. And then Delahaye coming in from Gulfstream Park here as kind of the pace play, where I think she might get a little bit of advantage on the pace. Mark, how about you?
Yeah, so you're not going to take the Josh horse, and you just kind of threw the Josh horse under the bus. So I'm going to land on the Josh horse as my top choice, and that's the 13 Not So Close.
I knew as soon as I saw Mary Lou Whitney Stables, you little...
No. I mean, I kind of looked at this horse, and I think you can make some excuses. The last 2 have been soft and good going, and I'm really wondering if this is a horse. The best stuff seems to be when it's a little bit firmer turf, and I realize they are getting some rain this week, but it's supposed to be dry Friday and Saturday at the fairgrounds. Should give the turf course a little bit of a chance to dry out. I think Santana does have a win on this horse, going a mile on the turf. I think he can go. He can kind of make the lead and play come catch me. He can at a big price. And I think he may be able to wire this field. So I thought the 13 Not So Close was a pretty interesting player in this race at a kind of stupid price. And the other horse I thought was really interesting, who is also a really kind of dumb price, is the 7 horse Flatter Me Silly, who is needs that pace setup that 13 is going to give him. You're getting a horse that really likes this fairground circuit. 7 of 8 in the money across it, a win going this distance, and it had a win last out in an optional 50. So a little bit of a stretch out, and real high percentage connections all the way around. I'm not a huge Corey Lannery fan, but he does really click with with the trainer. So I thought those 2 at big prices were both really sort of interesting in this field, and those were actually my top 2. So but as Josh said, I think you could go 7 or 8 deep here and not feel like you have enough coverage.
What about you, Matthew?
Yeah, so this is a race where I thought there was actually a fair amount of speed signed on. So I thought you had both the 13 wanting to go to the lead. We haven't really touched on the 12 Ouvre with Irad Ortiz Jr. aboard. That's a horse that traditionally is a 5.5 furlong sprinter that's now going 2 turns and has done it in the past and can win from off the pace, but again has kind of natural speed that some of these other horses might not quite have the same thing. So I'd expect that horse on the front end. You mentioned Delahaye going to be on the front end, as well as a horse like Hidden Connection, who's going to want to be very close to the lead. And then you have the Brendan Walsh horse, the number 5 Glorious Princess, who's also going to be right up there on the lead. So I thought it could be a pretty contested pace up on the front end. And as a result, I really was shifted and looked at horses that were going to be coming from off the pace. Josh, like you, I landed on the number 9 as my top choice. Not very imaginative, but a horse that I thought would have the right type of trip sitting mid-pack, doesn't necessarily need to be a deep closer, and can sit behind some of that early speed, proven over the track. and proven at the distance. And I just thought, very good form, gets Flavian or keeps Flavian aboard, I should say. And I just thought this one looked really tough in this particular spot. I will mention another horse that I'm interested in at a little bit more of a price, which is the number 4, Watch This Birdie. 8-1 on the morning line for Ignacio Correas the Force with James Graham aboard. And this is a horse that early in its career, they were running this horse on the dirt. They were running this horse sprinting. Since they went to 2 turns on the turf, this horse has never finished out of the money and is 9 for 9 in the money, 3 wins over that period of time. And do I think this horse is good enough to win? I don't know. But this is a horse I'm absolutely going to be including in my verticals to try to, if I'm going to use my favorite up top, then I want to try to find a way to enrich some bets. Using some prices in the verticals is how I'll do it. So Watch This Birdie, I thought was a really interesting horse coming off consecutive 3rd place finishes in a pair of stakes races at the fairgrounds in those 2 previous, Albert Stahl Memorial and the Pago Hop. And then like you, I was interested in Delahaye. I don't know what price you'll end up getting, obviously. And the only reason I think Delahaye might not be that close to the lead or doesn't need to be sucked up into the lead, I guess is a better way of saying it, is the debut race, which she lost, but she showed she can pass a lot of horses, and she doesn't need to be right on the front end. It's not a horse that needs the lead, and she just missed out that day on the win. So I thought, if Tyler wants to take back a little bit and sit like 3rd or 4th, that's fine. And I think it says something that Chad is stepping this horse up from a $25,000 optional claimer at Gulfstream Park to stakes competition. It speaks to some confidence that I think he has in this race. And if I'm not mistaken, this horse was working out with Fluffy Socks and kind of, working pretty fairly with Fluffy Socks. So I thought that was good competition to be keeping on the work tab. So that's one that definitely caught my eye as well. But those are the 3 that I kind of wanted to maybe talk a little bit about. But I agree with both of you that you could talk about 7 or 8 horses in this race. And I think talk yourself into most of them.
Hey, Matt, I got to ask you on Spirit and Glory. With her, I get some of the reasons that she's the favorite here, but they feel more like connection sort of angle reasons. Isn't her best stuff just not as fast as a lot of others in here who are going to be much bigger prices? I mean, I know time form really says that she's a bit slower than probably 5 or 6 others in here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it depends on the surface you're looking at. So like in Bayer, she's pretty clearly the top horse from a speed standpoint. But I think what is really impressive about her is that she fired that last race off a 6-month layoff. And you'd think, generally the thinking is they're going to take another step forward after that. And if she could do that off a 6-month layoff, man, if she's even more fit and more ready this next time out, to address your point about the morning line, I was a little surprised she was the morning line favorite, but a very weak morning line favorite at 4-1, obviously. Yeah. And I think this is one where if you like her, you're going to get an honest price because I think Delahaye is going to take money. I think there's some other horses that'll take money, and you'll end up, she might not go off as the post-time favorite, and you'll get even if she is a 4-1, 7-2 favorite is, not a bad. You're going to eat some chalk, but that's at least a modest price to be able to get.
There was another horse that you talked about. I had it written down. You were talking about the 4, Watch This Birdie.
Yeah.
I know Andy Serling used to love to bet horses claimed off of Chad Summers. I love to bet horses that Vinny Cheminot no longer is riding, and he's won on. So similar angle, right? If you can win with Vinny on your back, and you can win in Chad Summers' barn, you're for me. So Ignacio loves him, man. Nacho Correas loves Vinny.
He is loyal.
Yeah, he's very loyal.
Because didn't Vinny ride Didia this whole time?
He did, yeah.
I mean, like one of the best mares that we have.
Yeah. That's how you know she's good.
Yeah. I guess for me in here, I went a slightly, dramatically different way. So I watched the replay of the Alstall Memorial a couple times, and where I sort of landed with that is I either don't want any of those horses or arguably I can maybe make an argument for the number 1, Trying My Heart Out, simply because I think the price will be right. But I wasn't really that impressed with Spirit and Glory. I mean, she got a mid-pack trip on a race where the front fell off and the rail opened up. She saved every inch of ground. And for me, that just kind of feels like a horse you're supposed to bet against next time out. Now, Matt does make a good point that she did run that race off a 6-month layoff. If she steps forward off of that, then yeah, I mean, she's going to be tough to beat. Looking at her time form figures, she does seem to have plateaued in that 110 to 112 range. I know Brisnet shows a different story, so maybe there's some tricky figures to make. So depending what product you use probably influences your story there. But she's one that, as a likely favorite, I'm okay with if she beats me. I do think that Trying My Heart Out had a much rougher trip in that Alstar Memorial, who was much further back. And then also was lugging in on her left lead a little bit, got sawed off at about the 16th pole, and then had to, well, not sawed off, but pinched and got in very tight and had to show some good courage to actually persevere, and was gaining on Spirit and Glory late. So I thought if I want anybody out of that race, it's probably Trying My Heart Out. It's kind of funny if you go back and watch our stream for, I guess it would be the Risen Star. I guarantee you Mark makes the exact same speech for Not So Close now as he did then. So yeah, the horse looks good on time for him, but I'm kind of in Josh's camp that this is maybe just a hair too far. So beyond Trying My Heart Out and all the horses I don't like, I wanted to go to a new shooter who was not the Chad Brown, and I sort of begrudgingly landed on the number 2, Messidor. This is simply a horse that I think has been keeping slightly better company than most of these. You know, I think that grade 3 2-back at Gulfstream was an honest race, good enough anyway. And then if you look at, some of the races she's been in, she's kind of been all over the place, going short, going long. It seems like they never truly figured out what she wants to do. But she's one that I think is exiting some strong races, as she's competed in high stakes level company or grade 3s for most of her career anyway. And it's just kind of the new shooter in here that, Christophe Clement ships her in, Rosario gets up. I think he wrote a couple others in here that he decides to get off of to ride Messidor, and just seems like one that when I'm not really enamored with anybody out of a very common race, I tend to look for more of an outside horse. And the Chad Brown horse also fits that bill, except I don't think you're going to get much of a price on that. Whereas I do think Messidor might be in that 8 to 10 to 1 range, which I think is very fair. So I like the 1 and 2 in here as my top 2 selections, and then the 10 would be the kind of a B horse on my play.
I will say our good friend Chase Sessions, the Wolf of Oaklawn, has said that he is on the lookout for whether Christoph is wearing salmon-colored pants on Saturday. Because it's going to be a big day. And so we're on kind of lookout, not just for Otello, but, Messidor as well here. And I will say, that's a horse that caught my eye, Caleb, when I looked through because of Christoph. And I was like, how often does Christoph send horses to fairgrounds? Like, not very often. And I just thought that was noteworthy. And that's a barn that I just really trust, obviously, on the turf. And it feels like a very intended spot to put this horse. So he wouldn't put this horse in a spot if he didn't think he had a chance. And so you're right that it's one that could get lost on the board, I think, a little bit. And, actually maybe even float up from that 12 to 1 morning line. So that would be, I think an interesting pick. And I noted those kind of, if you go back, I mean, this horse, Mark, to your point about, is a Spirit and Glory fast enough? Messidor, from a buyer speed figure perspective, you go back to last year, and this horse absolutely has some races to run back to that are faster than what we've seen with some of the other horses in this field. So, Caleb, that's a good one to sniff out.
Looking in chat here real quick, Matthew Bickey, he likes Hidden Connection, on the surface switch,
Do we know if this is actually an intended? Is this like an incognito MTO, or is this horse actually going to run on turf? Because I feel like I've seen this horse do this before.
I'm not sure. Matthew, you know?
I don't know. I mean, I will say there's not a ton of turf pedigree, but I mean, I don't know if this is an MTO sort of a thing or not. But I agree with Caleb, though. I feel like I've seen. Now I'd have to go back to see like if that horse has been entered before in other turf races, because there was a Michelle Nevin horse today that ran at fairgrounds that was like randomly on the turf as well. And so there, sometimes at fairgrounds you find those that like all of a sudden a trainer just is like, 6 races into their career, like we're going to try the turf. So it happens sometimes, but yeah, it does seem like an odd move.
I usually that's what Baffert does, right? 6 races in, let's run us on the turf. Hey, look, we won a grade 1. Look at that.
Hey, that's what Todd did with Up to the Mark. Like, screw around on the dirt, and they know we just have the greatest turf horse in the world.
There you go.
Look at that, son of a gun.
He also likes
foreshadowing there, Matt.
Yeah,
for later.
Exactly.
He also likes the one Trying My Heart Out, which I think was the horse you were talking about, Caleb. Charles is mentioning every horse that Shane Wilson sends out is on fire, so he's going with the one. And yeah, Shane Wilson's 15% here on this meet, and yeah, he's definitely been heating up a bit here. So good call out there. Anything else you want to talk about here?
God, look! I'd have to calculate those because he's not just that he's winning a lot; he's hitting the board all the time, too.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy.
The only other horse I thought was a little interesting, and I thought Caleb would talk about, is the 6 horse Tufani, who, if you're a time form person, is just not fast enough. But horse loves fairgrounds, can get this trip. Byers said the horse is fast enough up in a couple of those races, like that optional 53 back would be a good fit here. And yeah, probably has the right run style if you think there's a fair bit of pace on in this race. So I thought that one, and I don't know, we'll see. I'm often wrong, but I would bet you get every bit of that 8-1.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that one up. That was one of the horses I wrote about in my analysis for this race because I was dead against this horse in the Marie Krantz when she went off as the favorite. I was like, I don't like this horse at all. But if you give me 8-1 on her, I absolutely do like her at that price. and I agree, she's got the right run style. So.
All right, race 9, the New Orleans Classic. We're going to be going 1 mile and 1/8 on the main track here. And your morning line favorite is the 3, Touch Upon a Star. You got Best Actor at 7-2, Money Supply at 9-2, Red Route 1 6-1, Gasoline at 8-1. Am I remembering correctly? But Sarah, big Red Route 1 fan, right?
I don't think so.
No.
She?
No, she Unoho.
No,
she was
not.
Unoho. Yeah.
Yeah, she likes Unoho.
Yeah, Unoho. I got the horses mixed up. Sorry. I get those plotters mixed up all the time. You know? But Caleb, where did you land?
Yeah, this was kind of a fun race for a grade 2. It feels like it came up perhaps a little bit soft. But I do think it's kind of competitive. My heart will certainly be pulling for the number 3, Touch Upon a Star, the local Louisiana bred horse that has just shown up over and over and over again, and not exclusively against State Bred Company, although that's definitely where he's done most of his damage. He did come and show up in the Sextant Mile and run a good second to Frosted Grace, who's a pretty nice horse, and then did beat technically Open Company, albeit at Delta Downs 3 back. But this horse is good. I mean, I don't think you can really knock the body of work here. And if you're just believing the figures this horse throws up, this horse is very much a serious player in here. So I do like Touch Upon a Star in here. 3-1 feels maybe a little shorter than I would want, but it's always interesting to me to try to gauge how the public is going to bet a horse like this that has a ton of wins and, objectively good numbers, but maybe the class test isn't quite there, or the connections are a little bit not exactly household names relative to some others in here. So I don't know what price you get, but I do like Touch Upon a Star in here. That's kind of my heart play. The horse that I would also use with Touch Upon a Star, who I don't think you'll get the morning line on, but I'm saying that quite a bit, so maybe I'm just off today, is the number 7, Super Corinto. So this is a horse that ran mostly in South America, in Peru and Chile, and then came into Gulfstream about a year and a half ago, actually, and ran 2 good races at Gulfstream. The horse actually beat Clapton in that race 2 back, who then came back to win a number of stakes races up to the Grade 2 Lucas Classic at Churchill. So that's a pretty strong race for an optional 62, kind of looking back in your time machine from 18 months ago. The big question here is, well, what happened? The horse disappeared for 6 months, went to Dubai, and then disappeared for another year. Kind of what's going on. So I don't have an answer to that question. Clearly something did go wrong with this horse to miss that much time. But I'm not that worried about the fact the horse didn't handle Dubai. We see a lot of horses ship overseas and just not show up. That Dubai World Cup was obviously a strong race. So I'm kind of ignoring that race result, but more or less just kind of curious as to what the cause is for the layoff. But I'm not super afraid of some of the other short prices in here, like Gasoline or Best Actor or Money Supply. And while they could win, I'm just not really that afraid of them. So I think that Super Corinto is kind of the wild card in here, whose 2 races in America are arguably good enough to win this race. And it just depends on what kind of horse you think this horse still is now as a 6-year-old. No gelding or anything yet, so that's an interesting development here. So he's my price play in a race that I don't think you see a huge bomb, but I'm not really inclined to take a horse that's going to be super short other than the Hometown Hero.
So any concern, right? The horse has obviously run well in Chile, right? And while in Chile, he had a Chilean rider in Hector Berrios. Now he's in America, and he's got a Puerto Rican rider, which is an American territory. However, different dialect of Spanish, right? Do you think that the horse and jockey will communicate as well here?
I mean, I think we have ChatGPT now, so it should be fine.
Okay. I like the horse as well. I have it as a B. Honestly, the fact that IRAD gets aboard here just set alarm bells off in my head, because why? Of all the horses in this race, this is the one you end up on. So that just kind of, like I said, it just set an alarm bell off. I'm guessing that this is the horse is well meant if IRAD's getting aboard after this long of a layoff. So I thought he was a bit interesting. Was there anybody else you want to talk about here, Caleb?
Not really. I mean, I'm sure others will make arguments for other horses in here, but for essentially everybody else, I just couldn't totally come around to. So I'm just going to be 3-7 in here.
Yeah, I also landed on the 5 Money Supply as well. Obviously won the mine shaft here. Kind of the I guess the prep for this race here. Won it pretty convincingly, and he got a fair bit of pace in front of him there. They went 23-4, 46-4 in a sloppy track, and he was able to close in and win by a head. And you see a lot of the same faces, same names showing up in here. And I do think that you're going to get a fair bit of pace in this race. So because of that, I thought that Money Supply might get the same trip and be able to close into a fast pace here. And he's beat most of the guys that are in this race. So why not again? But another horse I have marked as an A is the 10. Lure Him In. Barn switch over to Saffie Joseph Jr. If you look back at that Sunshine, was it the Sunshine Classic 2 back on Brisnet? Brisnet loved that race. They have that race as very, very fast, and that was a slow pace in front of him, or a rather moderate pace for Gulfstream standards,
Josh,
and was able to close into it.
Josh, before you get any further, I want to let you know Lure Him In is going to scratch.
All right, cool. Well, then looks like I only got 1A. So thank you.
So Marcus Hirsch reported that per Saffie Joseph, he is going to scratch out of both races that he was entered in this weekend for the Ghost Sapper at Gulfstream Park.
Beautiful. I hate him in the Ghost Sapper. All right. All right, Matthew. Why don't you jump in then? What do you got?
No. You had other horses.
No, that was it. That was it. I had the 2 horses. I only had 2. I had 3, but one of them scratched. So I'm gonna try the infinite money glitch with Money Supply here again, and see if I can get back-to-back wins with him. And then I will take a shot with a well-meant Super Corinto here, the 7.
Okay. I just didn't want you to go through your whole explanation and then for me to say it at the end, like, oh, he's going to scratch. And so
that's fine. I appreciate it.
Breaths. Yeah. So this is a race, like Caleb, I Touch Upon a Star is just a really good horse. And One that I definitely will be rooting for. I always root for these, smaller state bred horses when they step up against open competition. I mean, the horse, has faced good competition. To Caleb's point, beat horses like Miles D and 5-Star General. He came back to win a stakes race, and even beat in a Louisiana bred race. But he beat Tumbarumba, who we saw come back to win the Fred Hooper down at Gulfstream Park, a Grade 3, and finish second in a Grade 2. So very capable horse in that regard. My main concern is the amount of speed that's going to be in the race, and that going 1 1/8 with this sort of pace pressure could be maybe a little too much, because you'd figure a horse like Black Belt will be pretty forward. Obviously, Super Corinto might be more of a stalking and tracking trip, but then Best Actor is going to want to be forward as well for Brad Cox. And the horse I landed on is a horse that I have a hard time giving up on, and it's the number 2 Gasoline. And it's a horse that I just think has a good race in him. And maybe he doesn't, and maybe I'm just completely wrong. But this is a horse that had been showing really good form, and then kind of stepped up against some graded stakes competition and in the Clark and the Harlan Holiday, and really did not show much in those 2 races. And then came back in the Mine Shaft and finished 3rd. But if you look at those races in the Harlan's Holiday and the Clark, the horse lost all gate speed. Suddenly, a horse that had shown good tactical early speed, if not gate to wire type of speed, suddenly with Flavian and Irad aboard, 2 very capable jockeys, the horse, had a little bit of trouble early in the one race, but I mean, nothing that would have, prevented the horse from getting to the front or getting at least a tracking trip. Last time out, Johnny Velasquez gets aboard. Going to be some foreshadowing for the Louisiana Derby for me. There are a few jockeys I trust more than Johnny Velasquez on a horse to get the horse out and to show speed. And son of a gun, if suddenly the horse doesn't show speed coming out of the gate in the Mine Shaft, sitting 3rd over that sloppy steel track, finishing 3rd in that race, I just wonder if he's going to secure the same type of trip, kind of tracking right behind the speed in this case. The bigger concern is lately Gasoline doesn't seem like the type of horse that passes horses, but he has in the past. And so I don't think he's necessarily a plotter. I think he can get past horses. He broke his maiden going 1 1/8. So the distance shouldn't be an issue. I just, at 8 to 1, I don't know if we'll get 8 to 1. I feel like, Caleb and I are saying that a lot right now in terms of the morning line and what we end up getting on some of these horses. But, at 8 to 1, I thought that's a horse I'd take one more shot at in this spot, just because I think he might get the right type of trip. In this spot. Worked out very, very good for Pletcher in between the Mine Shaft in this race, and keeps Johnny aboard. So that's one that I'll take a little bit of a shot at. And then, like Caleb, Touch Upon a Star was kind of my second choice in this race. I thought was very well meant for this race and absolutely fits here. And from a buyer speed figure perspective, it kind of has a significant advantage over the field in some regards. So I think, definitely rooting for the Louisiana bred as well.
Well, plus, isn't 1 1/16 at Delta like 7 turns? Like, he should be fine with this.
It's like, Charlestown. Yeah.
Yeah.
When Art Collector, God bless him, went from running a 1-turn 9 furlong race to running a 3-turn 9 furlong race in back-to-back racing. And that always cracked me up.
All right, Mark, what'd you got?
Yeah, I had to catch some Delta slander from Caleb, and so I figure I'll pick the horse by Josh's favorite sire and Touch Upon a Star. I really think he is kind of the class of the field here, and I think he's gonna be really, really tough in here. He just loves to win, and he really likes the fairgrounds as well. So I think you can be pretty aggressive around Touch Upon a Star. That's all I got. Nice and simple.
I feel like we have to at least talk about Best Actor. It's not a horse I really love in here, mostly because of what I think of Money Supply, and this horse lost to Money Supply. So by the transitive property, this horse isn't very good, but that could very well be my own bias of Money Supply kind of creeping through.
I just don't think you can trust him.
No.
Yeah, right. He was supposed to win that race, right?
Yeah.
And
he had that. That was the setup. That was the race he was supposed to win last time. Because there was not a lot of other speed in that race. And he was lone speed, and he didn't win. And there's a lot more speed signed on here. So I have a hard time thinking that he's suddenly going to reverse course with more pace pressure at a longer distance. I don't see it.
I just
better
don't
around
think.
one turn to me as well. Sorry, go ahead.
Can we also add that Caleb just called a horse that won 5 races in a row not very good?
It's more of the way he got here, right? Like Chad Brown gave up on this horse. Like it's just he shouldn't be this good. But I will continue to be proven wrong.
Yeah, I just don't think Best Actor wants to go this far. Quite honestly, that's my biggest thing with him, and I agree with you. He's gonna have some pace to deal with early, so I don't think he's as good around 2 turns. And we know the 3 can go 3 turns, so all good.
That's right. More turns,
more better.
All right, let's move on to race 10, the Muniz Memorial Classic. We're going a mile and presented by Horse Racing Nation.
I was going to say
we have to add that for our
Is
friends.
Ed going to be presenting the award again, like he did last year? I hope so.
Did he present it? That's
yeah,
so
he really
funny.
did. He was there, like in the winner's circle, presenting the award. It's great.
Oh God, he would have loved that. Oh man. Actually, before we get to it, I don't know if we touched on Matthew Bickey. Matthew Bickey posting his picks. He likes the 2 here, Gasoline, so he's with you on that, Matthew. And then he also likes the 6, Happy American. Who I'm surprised Caleb didn't back for like the 5th straight
dude.
time.
I've chased Happy American for like 3 years. I think he might finally just be kind of over it. But every once in a while, it gives you a scare.
Man. And then Charles like, I'm very busy here, so you're saying, Mark? Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say Caleb's got his new channel maker, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
Dirt channel maker.
But we're gonna be going a mile and 1/8 here on the turf, Grade 2 Muniz Memorial. Mark, why don't you start us off here?
Yeah. So, I thought this was a fairly, I don't know, one of the more straightforward races in here, and I really landed on 2 horses on top. I'm not going to be super creative at all here, but if I get 6-1 on Strong Quality, I'll be rather shocked. That seemed like a massive overlay. I thought Strong Quality was coming out, really likes Farragon Circuit, should be controlling speed in this race, and just think is a really, really massive player. Massive player in here. And, if they get it going a little fast on the front end, I thought the other horse that I really kind of needed to have covered was the 3 Webslinger. No, he hasn't won in a while, but this is not the strongest of races. This is, a little bit of class relief for him. Jockey change might shake him up a little bit. So I thought those 2 were, your major players. And I didn't really need a lot of coverage beyond that. So I'm not going to talk too long. I'm sure Caleb's got a bunch of creative ideas in here. So I'll just copy down his prices because he'll toss a chalk someplace else.
Actually, I'm pretty aligned with you, Mark. I thought Webslinger and Strong Quality were probably the 2 most likely winners in here. I will say with Strong Quality, I mean, I remember I think we previewed that card at Fairgrounds. 2 back in the Bradley, he had everything his own way and nearly got run down. So I was worried about him in the Grade 3 last out. But then once again, he had everything his own way. But the extra 16th, I think, makes a difference for a horse like that, even though he's gone further in his career before. So yeah, I'm nervous about him, but I agree with you. 6-1 feels a little bit silly if I can get that on a horse that is very high quality and or strong quality, some would say, and potential lone speed in here. So yeah, I agree with you on those 2 picks. The only, there's a lot of other horses you could make a case for. The only one that I'll probably talk to a bit in here will be the number 8 Point Proven. This is a horse that needs to get better. And I think he's going to get completely dismissed simply because he's coming off of a win and off the turf race, and he's moving up from some cheaper optional claiming races. But this is a horse that ever since getting switched out of the Pletcher barn has really done nothing but improve. I mean, looking at time form, and even Brisnet for that matter, has paired or improved his speed figure in essentially every race, 6 or 7 races in a row. So I think it bears to at least have some confidence that this is a horse that's going to move forward, but he needs to move forward. So it just depends on what kind of a forward move you think he has in him. But this is one that I thought was going to get completely lost on the board and is in with somewhat of a shot. I think he's one that's going to benefit more from the extra ground relative to a few others who I'm not sure it suits them quite as well, going from a mile and a 16th or a mile out to a mile and an eighth. So I think that Point Proven is probably the most interesting long shot in the field for me, but I would agree with your initial take. The 2 and the 3 are the most likely winners.
I had written down. I wrote down 2 horses in this race. Obviously, the 2 I see an E8. I bet E8. I mean, I'm a very simple man. But yeah, Caleb, I think you brought it up. Like you said, you brought it up last time in the race 2 back. He was life and death to win that one, and then he got caught last time out. Although be it on a soft track. So I just don't see much pace pressure for him. So as long as that keeps on happening, like, I don't know, I gotta bet him, especially at Fairground. So I'm going back to that. The 2 Strong Quality, and then the other horse I'm taking is the horse that Charles mentioned before, the 13. I'm Very Busy. Coming off of the Pegasus World Cup Turf Invitational, second place in there to a all-world horse in Warm Heart. Nothing wrong with losing a horse like that. So coming in off that race, IRAD aboard. This seems like, even though this horse is not going to get much pace in front of him, this should be a race that he's more than capable to win. So I'm pretty simple here. I'm just the 2 and the 13. Matthew, where did you land?
So you guys, for Naira Bets, I did an analysis of all the stakes races in this sequence, and I pick a top 4 in each race. And you guys have already touched on 3 of the top 4. So Strong Quality. You're right. No other pace pressure. I mean, this horse's plan is very simple. Go out and wire the field. We almost saw a horse, Hunatra, today, almost do this at Fairgrounds in the 8th race. And it's a bad beat if you had that horse at 14-1. Just got caught in the last stride. So you can absolutely see it at Fairgrounds. At Webslinger, maybe Flavian makes the difference. But this is a horse that just finds trouble. Just every single frickin' race finds trouble. And it doesn't matter what jockey, it doesn't matter what track, it doesn't matter what type of trip, it doesn't matter the distance. This horse gets checked, bounced around, 8 wide, pinched inside. Something goes wrong with Webslinger every single race. Now, if you tell me Webslinger gets the dream trip, I think he's heads and shoulders above everybody else in this race, actually. I think he's that good of a horse. He's got that much talent. But until he runs a clean race, it's hard for me to trust him at what is likely going to be a shorter price. Obviously, I'm Very Busy, very good horse as well. The horse that I'll mention, and is ultimately my top pick, because I'm going to take a little bit of a shot here, is the other Chad, and is Adamo on the inside, the number 1. 12-1 on the morning line. Will we get 12-1? No. Will we get half of 12-1? Maybe. And this is a horse that's run in 9 consecutive Grade 1 races. This is a class drop for this horse. And maybe this horse is over the hill. Maybe this horse's best running is behind him. Totally possible. But I just think at that price, a horse that has this sort of back class and has run in these types of spots is, I think, a little bit more appealing. I actually like the fact that he's shortening up in this spot rather than doing the 1.5 miles. I just don't think he can close into those slower fractions anymore. Not that Strong Quality is going to, set the world on fire being alone on the front end, but I think going 1 1/8 miles is going to be a little bit better for this horse. Going to get the inside trip with Tyler aboard. At that price, I'm interested. Obviously there's a price where I'm not going to be interested anymore, but I think it's a horse worth mentioning. We always talk about being surprised by the other Chad, and this feels like a classic other Chad type of race where everybody's looking at I'm Very Busy, and then suddenly Adamo rediscovers his form from mid-2023. So, I think that's an interesting horse to at least mention, but agree with you guys on the points you've made with the other 3 horses.
I'll be honest, I thought Adamo retired like 3 years ago.
I thought that way about like Channel Maker, and I thought that way about like every single New York turf horse. I'm like, is this horse still running? What are we doing with this horse? Like Red Knight, I'm like, this horse is still going. Verstappen's still going. Like Red Knight's still going. Like These horses are still running. What is going on here?
It's so fun. It's such a fun division.
It's insane. And by the way, I when you were talking about Channel Maker earlier, every day on the way to work, I go across the Cross Bay Bridge, and there's a little channel that I go across to get to Ozone Park and Aqueduct. And there's a place called Channel Market. And the way that the light and the tree blocks the sign, every freaking time I drive past it, I think it says Channel Maker. And I think of like you, and I'm like, Channel Maker, I need to take a picture of this. And I'm like, oh, Channel Market. That's right, not Channel Maker.
That's amazing.
Every time I see that sign, I think of Channel Maker.
That is amazing. I love it.
What if I told you that the perfect man did exist, but he was cursed? I mean, he's just a complete handicapper. East Coast, West Coast, Midwest. Might be the best I've ever seen. He could be the best looking guy in all of horse racing. I mean, he gives Matt Bernier a run for his money. I mean, we all saw it. He was minding his own business, walking back from the bathroom. Hottest girl on the bar just grabs him and says, "Reel me in." Turns out you can't always be that lucky, though.
Zulu Alpha charges up the rail under Tyler Gaffleon and takes the lead late. Zulu Alpha wins the Pegasus World Cup Turf.
I forgot that was Zulu Alpha, not Channel Maker, but I feel like I had to play it anyways.
It still works.
Oh, goodness.
The
You
whole
and
time
Turf
I'm watching it,
Horses.
I'm like, where is this going?
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, I got all those demonetized because apparently ESPN did not like the fact that I used their little ditty, but yeah. So I stopped making those
Not
after
just
that.
me getting things demonetized is what you're saying.
Yeah. Anything else on this race before we move on? Matthew Bickey thinks this is a bomb race.
He has this Evan Markdown, who I think actually makes a fair bit of sense in here. Gigante, who does have a win across the surface for Asmussen. If you think there's a little bit of pace, if you like somebody, I mean, he won't be coming from as far out of it as like a web slinger, but I feel like something from that sort of mid pack and kind of get that sort of first run. I think Gigante makes some sense in there.
I loved him last out and was amazed he went off at 8-1. And he was kind of flat for what I thought he would do. Can you chalk that up to the soft turf course? Perhaps.
Yeah.
But I agree with him. And another I think that we can maybe just briefly touch on is the 4 Beatbox. When we talk about strong quality, that's a horse that all of us recognize as lone speed. He was lone speed last time out, set moderate fractions, and Beatbox came from mid pack to run him down. I mean, why can't that happen again? I mean, I'm not saying I love the horse, but I mean, I think it's a horse that you got to think about.
What does time for him think of that last race? Because Brisnett's got it very slow. And, Brisnett tends to make the turf routes bigger numbers just because they're turf routes. So
yeah, the internals were pretty slow. Normal early, and then slow in the middle, and then normal late.
But like the final fig, like is it look
it's a
okay
strong
in here?
figure. I mean,
Yeah,
It's a strong figure. Yeah, it fits in this field.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the fastest fig in the field, but it's a contender.
All right, let's move on here to race 11, the Fairground Oaks. Very productive race for the Kentucky Oaks, and we're gonna be going 1 mile and 16th here for 3-year-old fillies, and a smallerish field than we're accustomed to seeing on these cards. But your favorite is going to be Tarifa at 8-5, and Intricate at 2-1. So they're going to be kind of vying for favoritism here. Matt, why don't you start us off here? Where did you kind of land?
Yeah, so there were 2 horses that caught my. Obviously, the 2 favorites make a ton of sense. I think Tarifa seems like a horse that is continually moving forward and has that traditionally classic tracking style, which has proven to be highly effective in these types of prep races for the Oaks or the Derby. You don't need to lead, can sit right off, is not pace dependent, can put herself in a position to get the right trip. I mean, she's the type of horse that strikes me as the type that people will go, well, she got the perfect trip last time, and then she just keeps getting the perfect trip. And people go, well, how does I'm going to keep betting against her. And she just kind of keeps putting herself sitting third on a pocket trip outside. And I think this race kind of sets up similarly because of the small field size, like you mentioned, Josh. There's really only one other clear speed horse in the race. I'd expect for her to be able to sit a pretty good trip in this spot. The horse that I'll mention that I think is a little bit interesting, and listen, I have a very love-hate relationship with Ken McPeak, and mostly hate, but is Vivi's Dream. And this is a horse that you can make an excuse for the last two races, and that it was a sloppy sealed track in both instances. And maybe this horse just does not like that. And if you go back and look at this horse's first four races where she never finished out of the exacta and won two of them, including a complete blowout in the Pocahontas and a close second to Candide in the Alcibiades, if she can return to that form over a dry track, then 8-1 is a very good price for her. And that's a big if, and there are definitely some question marks there. She should also secure kind of a mid-pack tracking trip from that inside rail, save a lot of ground with Brian Hernandez Jr. aboard. I think that horse is a little bit interesting because the forecast has changed a little bit in the last 12 to 14 hours at New Orleans. There's supposed to be a lot more rain tomorrow. There's only supposed to be kind of scattered thunderstorms in the morning and then clearing up. So it's going to be a fast track, I would imagine, on Saturday. And I think this could be a really good condition for Vivi's Dream to put her best foot forward. And the other horse is the other Cox, Alpine Princess. This is a horse I loved last time out, and she did not run particularly well. But I think you can, again, make the same excuse that she just didn't like a sloppy track. But this was a horse coming off consecutive wins. And I think the pedigree would point to the fact, Classic Empire and Curlin, you would imagine distance is going to be no problem at all. And this is a horse that has some versatility, can go straight to the lead. Probably won't do that in this case because you have a horse like Our Pretty Woman who probably will go straight to the front, but has one from off the pace as well. So that's one at 8-1 as well for Brad Cox that I just thought was a little bit interesting. So those were the two that I kind of zeroed in on in addition to obviously the two favorites.
Yeah, I landed on the two horses you kind of mentioned there at the end, Alpine Princess and Our Pretty Woman. Alpine Princess, at least on Brisnet, if you cross a line through the last race, which was on a sloppy track, the horse has really not done much wrong. It's looked to be improving at the end of her 2-year-old season, and came up here in the Rachel Alexandra and ended up with a sloppy track. And although pedigree would say, hey, this horse should absolutely love to run on a sloppy track, we know that doesn't exist. I mean, Chad Brown had that Union Rags horse. He tried to run on turf constantly. So, we're not it's not perfect. Yeah, so I'm willing to give this horse another shot as the other Brad Cox horse in this race. And 8-1, get a little bit better of a price. I know you're going to have two really short prices in this race, so we're going to go ahead and toss that last race and see what we can get there. And the 7 Our Pretty Woman, is got two wins, both of them over the slop. But I think when we talk about the pace scenario here, hasn't had to necessarily exert herself too much early. So not sure if this is going to be, a leader, the leader here, or is going to sit just off. But I know that this horse is going to be forwardly placed. And I just think that this is going to be a nice alternative to the two other short prices. Is kind of a new shooter, lightly raced here. So one that I would expect to move forward off that last race. And at least on Brisnet, if she moves forward off that last race, that puts her right into what the rest of these horses are running. So I'm going to take the 3 Alpine Princess and the 7 Our Pretty Woman here. Mark, where did you land?
Nothing super creative here. Tarifa and Our Pretty Woman. I would probably Our Pretty Woman over Tarifa, just given the fact that I think at this point in time, at least, I think we know what Tarifa is. I think Our Pretty Woman has every opportunity to take another step forward. I thought her last race was really, really, really good. The question mark there for me, she's never really caught a fast track, and the pedigree says she should love the off going. So is she just getting kind of, fluffed up in a sense by the softer going, or by the wetter going? But no, I thought Our Pretty Woman was super interesting in here. At least she can go this far, and you kind of know her early, and she's going to face a little classier company here. But I thought she was a really, really interesting player in here, and probably what ends up being your third choice, I would imagine, come post time.
Yeah, I don't really have anything creative to say relative to what you already mentioned. I kind of split the difference between what everyone's talked about in the sense that I think that Our Pretty Woman is my top pick here. Can control the race on the front end if that's the decision they make, but if not, has proven the ability to sit just off and rate a little bit. Yeah, never handled a fast track. Still may not get one. We'll see, but I'm not really worried about the track conditions all that much. This horse it should be just fine, I think. And the other horse I liked is the one, Vivi's Dream, for a lot of the reasons that Matt talked about. If she gets back to her, earlier form from late 2023, especially in the Alcibiades, then she's a handful for this field. But it's Kennedy Peak in a big race, so no matter what I do, I'll be wrong. So, but I do like the horse, so I'll probably be wrong by betting her as opposed to wrong by not betting her. So just you've all been warned.
Caleb, you and I need to create a support group, I think. And we just need to and it's funny because everybody at my job knows about my Ken McPeak issues that I have, that when I don't think his horses are going to run a step, they win, aka Mystic Dan. And when I think that they're great and they're set up for a race, they run just awful, i.e. Smile Happy. And so I've actually told my boss, I go, if I submit a race analysis with Ken McPeak horse up top, send it back to me and I'll revise it because clearly I'm out of my freaking mind. And so she's kept me to my word on that. And so I just, there's some trainers you're never on the right side of. I mean, I know some people always are chasing a Shug McGahee horse, or something like that, like Shug off the layoff or Shug, that sort of thing. Like, when's he going to pop, coming off of, with a first timer or something like that. And so there are some trainers that you just don't have a good handle on. And McPeak is one of those for me. And I will say it does seem, and I don't think this pertains to this particular race because it's obviously it's an Oaks prep and he's trying to get these horses into the big race. But it does seem like he is sending his best horses to Oaklawn and his secondary horses to Fairgrounds. And so it's just in general, that's something that I've noticed. But again, for these races, obviously for the next race, these are all horses he obviously holds in high esteem because he's trying to get them into the Kentucky Oaks and Kentucky Derby.
So congratulations to Ken McPeak and Midsummer March for winning the Fairground Oaks.
Goodness gracious. Matthew also shares your guys' love for Vivi's Dream. He's got her on top. And then next he's got the 7, Our Pretty Woman, the 8, and then finally the 2. So he's got both McPeaks covered. Which maybe he's got it figured out, Matthew. Maybe that's what you got to do. You got to use them all. You got to use none of them.
Yeah, it's like covering all the Chad horses, right?
Exactly. And then there's a surprise 5th Chad that you completely forgot about.
Wait, that horse hasn't retired?
All right, race 12 here, the Louisiana Derby. twinspires.com we got a full field of 12 here. Your morning line favorite is the 12 track Phantom, and then you have Catching Freedom at 4-1, Common Defense at 6-1, and then you got a whole bunch at 8-1 and double digits on everybody else. You know, oddly enough, I talked briefly about this race with Andrew Champagne on the Drinking Champagne podcast, which he completely surprised me about because we at no point said that we were going to talk about this race. But you know, common wisdom, if you've watched any of our streams, would say Josh has taken the 12. Track Phantom. I mean, this clear as day. But I have some concerns. Obviously, last time out, finished second to Sierra Leone. Got everything his own way, and just got caught at the end. And was posted out pretty wide in the 11 post. Gets the 12 post here. So I think maybe you can say, hey, it was a sloppy track. Because the other time was on a sloppy track, also finished second. But I don't know. The speed horse drawn all the way to the outside in the 12 post does concern me a little bit. Maybe I've been playing too much Hong Kong where draw really matters. But I'm going to take the speed horse that's drawn inside. I like the 3 Antiquarian here for Todd.
God
Pelcher
damn it, Josh! That's my.
I like the 3 horse here, Antiquarian, as just kind of a new face to this group here. Broke its maiden here at Fairgrounds with Johnny V aboard, and they're running it back. And I just think that these lightly raced horses, I always feel like they have a shot to improve. Didn't get the lead outright from right at the beginning, but got it by second call and led the rest of the way there. But if you look at this horse's last couple races, you just see italics everywhere. So this horse has been in very, very productive maiden races. And those are the types of horses that tend to move forward and tend to turn into stakes horses. So I just thought going to be the inside drawn speed in here. And Johnny V sees fit to stay aboard here. So I thought that this was a really interesting horse. I think this is a aggressive spot for him, and I think that I think it's going to offer a little bit of value here. I mean, 12-1 on the morning line there, and as kind of a alternative. In case something crazy does happen with this pace, we only have 2 E-types in here in Antiquarian and Track Phantom drawn to the outside. But if some of these other horses that have shown some speed, but you have seemed to be more tactical with it, if they end up going, or if we get some type of insane pace in front of us. I thought Honor Marie was interesting as a closer in this spot. Obviously, last time out in the Risen Star, kind of came up a little bit short, but didn't get much pace in front of it, in front of him. Sorry, and was a sloppy track. And I think if we get a dry track and we get a bit more pace, I mean that 96 figure on Brisnet 2 back. I mean that fits in with the rest of the field here. So I thought that this was a horse that could run back to that Kentucky Jockey Club race. I thought it was a little bit interesting here. I think he's going to need a pace setup. Not sure if he's going to get it, but I thought he was an interesting alternative to some of the short prices here. So I'm going to use the 3 Antiquarian, and I'm going to use the 7 Honor Marie. Matthew, sorry I stole your thunder, but you can go now.
Yeah, I had very similar thoughts to you. I think this pace dynamic is really interesting in this race. Again, I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about the Jeff Ruby Stakes. I completely disagree with the way DRF has this, or Timeform US has this pace projection. I just do not see a hot pace at all. I think a horse like Next Level flash speed 3 races ago and is clearly not the same horse. I don't see anybody going to the front. Or I don't see 4 or 5 horses going to the front or anything like that, forcing a hot pace. And I certainly don't see a horse like Saudi Crown in this race that just goes out alone and sets a hot pace, as evidenced by the fact that Track Phantom took his sweet time getting around the track on the front end in the Risen Star. I also think it's important to point out, I can imagine that Asmussen is going to pull an epicenter with Track Phantom and say, why don't we use the Louisiana Derby? We're already in the starting gate. Why don't we use the Louisiana Derby as an opportunity to teach this horse how to rate a little bit, especially breaking from the far outside. Don't kill yourself trying to get to the front. Let's teach this rate a little bit, sit off the pace. I would imagine that Ricardo Santana Jr. is going to probably send from the inside rail of Hall of Fame, who is Track Phantom's stablemate. I think Antiquarian can either sit right there or take the lead. And so I don't see any other speed in this race. So I think the two of them are going to be out kind of in front of everybody else with Track Phantom tracking off of it. And it's important to point out, since the race has gone to 9.5 furlongs, 3 of the 4 winners have been gate to wire. Epicenter is the only winner who was tracking and was within a length and a half of the pace. So it's not exactly a race that's been setting up for closers in recent years when it's been stretching out. I agree with you about Antiquarian. I mean, and the importance of Johnny Velasquez. And I go back to that. Like, this is one of the things, like, Barshoe gets a lot of grief for a lot of stuff, and, say what you will. But his theory that when Johnny V has a speed horse, everybody else backs off is 100% true. It is remarkable to see how when Johnny V has a speed horse, he gets out on the front end and everybody else just suddenly gets timid. There was no reason Hoist the Gold should have been alone on the front end in the Cigar Mile. And yet there he was alone on the front end with Johnny Velasquez aboard, and that horse somehow got a mile in that race. And so I just have a ton of confidence in Antiquarian in this spot. I know Pletcher doesn't have the greatest record, stepping last out maiden winners up to graded stakes competition, 2 for 36 over the last 5 years. Obviously, this horse is switching off Lasix, but Josh, as you mentioned, ton of class that this horse has been running against. 2 next out winners from the last race, ran against Conquest Warrior, who seems to be everybody's wise guy horse in the Florida Derby. So a lot to like there with the 3. The only other horse I will mention is Hall of Fame. And I just think that, again, this is a race that could be dominated up front. Hall of Fame's a horse that has shown good speed. And you could make the argument that the 2 races where he's not really shown to be, not really run a very fast figure were the 2 races where he was further back. And this horse just needs to be forward. Now, you could also say that correlates nicely with him getting Lasix as well, which is 100% true. So we'll have to see whether it's Lasix or whether it's the trip. But like I said, I'd imagine Ricardo is going to be aggressive with him coming out of the inside rail now that Triple Espresso is scratched and going to the Jeff Ruby. So those were the horses that I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about. But, Honor Marie, would not be surprised if that horse jumped up and improved. Even a horse like Catching Freedom, who kind of got pinched late, I thought, in that Risen Star, it could take a step forward here with a slightly less troubled trip and, might be sitting a more of a mid-pack trip. So those were some of my thoughts, but a little miffed that you sniffed out my 12-1 shot that I had up top. So
you said Triple Espresso scratched, Matt? They're going to run him in the Ruby?
Yeah, that's what Pletcher said, that he's running in the Ruby. I mean, that's
wow.
Now, granted, he's the second AE in the Ruby, so it's not even guaranteed that he's going to draw into the race. I'd imagine that one other horse will scratch, but yeah, I think I saw that either Marcus Hirsch reported that or one of the other, or Mary Rampanelli maybe reported that. But yeah, it was reported that Agate Road was going here because they were both cross-centered. Agate Road was going here and Triple Espresso was going there.
So that kills me because I really love Triple Espresso in this spot, given the fact that he does not have the turfiest of pedigree. And I thought maybe Pletcher just had it wrong and had a dirt horse all along. So that's frustrating. Okay.
Okay, frustrated, Mark. Who else do you like then?
Yeah, no, nothing super creative here. Obviously Track Phantom is super interesting here. It depends what they end up doing with him. Right. He can totally win. And obviously he's a very, very, very good horse. I kind of landed on Hall of Fame, and, albeit the 2 back, his best performance being on Lasix, and being a massive top form does scare me a little bit, but, I'm trying to understand, is the regression the fact that he caught a sloppy track in the next race, or is it the fact that said it was the Lasix. At 8-1, I would kind of pay to find out. So I thought Hall of Fame was really interesting in here. And I know that Josh also mentioned Honor Marie. I thought Honor Marie was very, very interesting here. A horse that both wins have come across a fast track, and both times he's caught a sloppy track, he's not run nearly as well. So I thought Honor Marie just may be the type that needs the faster going. Interesting, more localish connections. So it's nice to see the small guys getting a good one. So I thought Honor Marie was a major player in there as well, and super interesting. But I won't go on too long, because I was hoping I would get to wax poetically about Double Espresso, and then Matt kills my thunder.
I'm just killing everybody. I'm just scratching horses left and right that everybody likes.
Well, Josh killed Matt's thunder, so now it's only fair that Matt has to snipe your horse. So, I don't have much to add. I think we all see this race pretty similarly. I think my biggest opinion here is that I don't want anything to do with Track Phantom. He just isn't. He's not getting any better, and that's kind of my biggest problem with him. Is he's just kind of running the same race over and over. He got run down last time by Sierra Leone, despite having a pretty cupcake trip up front by himself. Now he has to go an extra 16 from a bad post. Maybe they epicenter him, like Matt said. It just for me, I don't like him in this race. If he wins, I'll lose, and that's kind of fine with me. But the other horses, they're going to get good use of the Candy Ash Trip Alert. But the other horses are ones that we've kind of talked ad nauseum about. I had the Hall of Fame, Antiquarian, and Honor Marie as my top three. I really like Honor Marie. I just don't know if I want him this time, or maybe next time, or 2 starts down the road. Fairgrounds is a tough place to close. There might be some moisture in the track. I agree that I think the pace projector has this wrong. I don't think it's going to be very quick. I think it'll be a pretty slow and controlled pace, actually. So I'm kind of surprised to see the way the time form pace projector has this race forecasted as being swift. And I think Honor Marie might just be left with too much to do. But I do think this is a very nice horse. It's going to win a nice race down the road. I just don't know if this Saturday is when I really want Honor Marie. But I had the 2, 3, and 7 as my top selections. I did find a horse like Charles mentioned, the 10 horse Common Defense. I found that horse kind of interesting. He ran a fine race at a big price in the Rebel last out, and then he shows up here for the Louisiana Derby. That clearly didn't handle an off track 2 back, but if you look at his starts over good or fast tracks, he's been pretty good. I have no real knocks against him, other than the fact that he's trained by a certain someone that is the president of my support club. So I think that horse does make sense. Like, he lost to Timberlake by 2 lengths, and you got to figure what Timberlake would be, probably something like 9-5 in this field, maybe. So
at least, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't mind that pick. And the other one that I think is going to take a little bit of money is Catching Freedom, the number 5. 4-1 feels like a terrible price to me on that horse. I think he's maybe a slightly worse version of Honor Marie, but the flashy connections might take more money there. This is a horse that I think does have ability, but they cannot keep this horse straight in the lane. If you watch any of his replays, he is constantly lugging in on his left lead, trying to lug in and leaning on horses. It arguably cost him, I don't know if it cost him the race, but it certainly cost him the place, I would say, last time. The fact that he could not straighten out until the race was essentially decided. And if I see that once, I'm more inclined to bet the horse, assuming they can figure something out. But when I see it happen 3 and 4 times, then it's hard for me to think it's not going to happen again. So that's a horse that I think has ability, but is really still kind of putting it all together. And I'm not sure if this is the right spot for this horse.
All right. And then Matthew Bickey, he likes the 4 here, Agate Road, but Agate Road running here, right? Or running in
running here. Yeah, I will say, I don't know if you guys watch this or not. I go back and forth with how much I watch workouts. I watch some more maiden races, but Agate Road worked out with Antiquarian the last couple of times. But if you go back and watch that, I believe it was the March 8th workout, Antiquarian just buried Agate Road in a workout. I mean, it wasn't even close. Like, was being held back, and Agate Road was being encouraged, and still beat him by like a half a length after starting behind him. I mean, it was on the outside. And so Agate Road, my concern with this horse is now it's interesting to see the numbers on Brisnet because the numbers on Buyers is this horse just is nowhere near fast enough for this race and has just been running kind of the same low 70s, or high 70s, low 80s Buyers speed figures. And that Sam F. Davis was slow. And so that was, I think, a 70 he got on Buyer for that race, finishing second. And that was a hot pace that he got. I don't think none of us think apparently that he's going to get a very hot pace here. So I just don't see him closing into that type of a pace. So that's kind of my kind of an issue with Agate Road, aside from whether he's a dirt or a turf horse.
Yeah, I mean, and further to dump on Agate Road and firmly put him in the winner's circle. No More Time, who he lost to in that race, came back and lost in that blanket Tampa Bay Derby finish and actually regressed and ran even slower than what he initially ran.
Wow.
Yeah. Sam F. Davis.
True.
So, yeah, I think the results will mislead people into thinking that if you're a numbers person, I feel that's a harder horse to come up with on any type of figure that I've seen.
Anything else in this race?
I look forward to Ken McPeak winning on Real Men Violin.
Oh goodness.
Wait, all Ken McPeak pick 5? Is that what we're going for here?
It's that or the Luan Machado pick 5 at Turfway. I've had more success with the latter, so that's what I'm talking about.
I will say that Andrew liked both the Kenny McPeek horses in this race.
Of course he did.
So, yeah. So he was on Real Men Violin as well as what was the other Common Defense?
Wait, it's almost Lord Miles Day, isn't it?
Almost, yeah. It's coming up.
I promised Andrew that I would do a special video about Lord Miles for him coming up for the Wood Memorial preview. So I need to come up with some creative ideas. So
yeah, I don't know how, but he got that winner's circle picture, and he's got it framed. So that's going to be in the back of every one of our videos now. So it's just a gift that keeps on giving,
Jelly of the Month Club stuff.
Matthew, what do you got going on? Obviously you're posting stuff on Twitter, on NYRABets.com. Anything coming up?
Yeah, ton of stuff on Naira Bets, obviously, daily stuff like long shot of the day, but obviously a lot of stakes analysis across the country, analysis of the late pick 5 sequence here at Fairgrounds, Jeff Ruby Stakes and Louisiana Derby analysis. But, long term, just a ton of content, obviously, around the Derby and around getting ready, getting players ready for how to bet the Derby, et cetera. And, just excited to, be covering a lot of different tracks and, already have stuff covered for the UAE Derby. Excited that I'll be doing a live stream with Acacia Clement. I always want to say Acacia Courtney, but Acacia Clement, who is over in Dubai right now with Pandagate. And so she and I will be doing a live stream of the Thursday before the UAE Derby, bright and early at 8 or 9 a.m. Eastern time. And so she'll be sharing kind of what she's been learning over there. And so that's going to be a lot of fun. So you'll be able to catch that on Twitter. And just staying busy, man, covering all the tracks. And here's the big news. And I know Mark's going to be excited about this. 2 months until Assiniboia, baby. May 20th, day of Assiniboia Downs. It's time to bet Antonio Whitehall and Marvin Buffalo. Let's fucking go.
And all the Golden Gate shippers, just blind bet the Golden Gate shippers and you just print money. It's amazing.
1,000,000%. You just print money doing that. And so it's excited for that. And obviously going to be doing a lot with track stats for Keeneland, Churchill Downs coming up for those spring meets. And then I joke, but I will be doing a lot of stuff with Assiniboia because it's just been a great early week track that a lot of people seem to have a cult following with, and myself included. And it's just been a lot of fun to cover that track and follow that track over the last couple of years. And, I think their handle, according to Ed, I want to say their handle went up something like 16% last year or some pretty obscene number. So they're clearly doing the right thing, and that's really exciting for the sport to see a secondary track like that really thrive right now.
It's almost like a third tier track. The other thing is they're a low takeout track as well. They have a number of low takeout wagers, which are very player friendly. And it's a fun track where you can take it very casual. It's not serious. Just you can cap it real quick, and you can chase biases, and it's a super super fun track to play.
Yeah. Yeah, it's for the first month, everything's a 5 foot long sprint, and and you just bet inside speed, and it's just, it's money in the bank, and eventually they start stretching out, and it becomes a lot of fun, and they run horses back every 2 weeks, and you get to really know the horses, and you get to know all the connections because there are like 8 jockeys in the jockey colony, and so you just get to know everybody and their tendencies and what they're good at and what they're not good at. I just say it's a great track for people beginning with handicapping. Because it's an approachable track that doesn't overwhelm you. It's one surface, but it's simpler than Oaklawn, where Oaklawn's a puzzle that a lot of people have a hard time figuring out. Assiniboia, it's easier to figure out. And they have some really, low base bet minimums. Like I think they have a 10-cent pick 5 or a 20-cent pick 5 or something like that.
Yeah, it's like a 20-cent pick 5, but it's a jackpot. But they have a 20-cent pick 3. And if you want to get into something like that, that's so approachable. A couple of bucks for a pick 3, it's amazing. Double.
You can spend $6. You can learn how to build a bad ticket, learn how to build a good ticket, and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. So we'll have a lot of stuff around that. You'd think that I work for Assiniboia Bets, but I don't.
So wait, you said that Acacia is over in Dubai with PandaGate?
Yeah.
That's interesting that she's able to get into Dubai with PandaGate, because actually Chase is no longer allowed in the Little Rock Zoo due to PandaGate. You can ask him. You can ask him the story about that. But yeah. But
Chase
that's
isn't allowed a lot of places.
That's going to do it for us. Obviously, check us out at ontherwronglead.com, at wrong_lead. I am at Cherry Drank. Mark is at 2 Turns. Caleb at Caleb WVU on Twitter. And hope you guys have a great week. Shout out to all my Kentucky fans. RIP. Kentucky ends up going down. But hey, maybe this will cheer you guys up.
12! Let's go!